Wow, wow, wow.
Right?
Welcome to Canary Cry Radio episode 197. I say with confidence that we are the only Christian podcast to be on the bleeding edge of reporting boots on the ground from Burning Man for nearly a decade, standing on the shoulders of researchers like Carl Teichrib and his work on the Re-Enchantment and Transformative Events. No other Christian podcast has addressed why these events are important for the future of our culture while evangelizing and preaching the gospel message of Jesus Christ in the middle of the most esoteric annual event in Black Rock City. Carl is back with a much-needed update on everything, but make sure to go to burningmanresearch.com to access the archive of all of our work. Canary Cry Radio is a value-for-value podcast, which means no ads, no affiliate codes, no products. We operate purely on listener support, whom we call producers because that's what they do. They produce the show. Visit canarycry.support to learn more. But without further ado, here is Carl Teichrib back on Canary Cry Radio.
The man, the myth, the legend, Carl Teichrib. Thanks for coming on the show, buddy. Such a pleasure, as always, to have you on. Very excited.
Well, hey, likewise, this is good, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to have a conversation with you guys.
Love it.
Good to see you back.
Now, for the longtime Canarians, they will know, they will be very familiar with you, but, you know, there's always new people, and there's people who have been around a long time who maybe it just, you know, sometimes it doesn't, the bell doesn't ring until it's explained, but Carl, we've been so excited to be able to work with you for over 10 years now. The first time that we connected about your work was back in 2014. And then since 2018, we've had the lovely opportunity to connect basically on a regular basis in a lot of ways. But for those who maybe be meeting you for the first time, would you just tell the people a little bit about you, your work, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm a Canadian-based researcher. I've been involved in as a Christian author, researcher, trying to understand trends, patterns, shifts in the culture and politics, in religion, so that the Christian community can be better equipped to answer, to respond to the challenges of our day. I've been around a long time doing this work, full-time since 1997. From 1997 to 2001, I was a director of research for a Christian-based ministry out of Indiana with Gary Kaw, the author of En Route to Global Occupation, and then The New World Religion under his umbrella, helping him do the research for his book, The New World Religion. From 2001 forward, it has been freelance plus our own little organizations and operations. For a time, I edited a monthly newsletter called Forcing Change, and it was almost like a monthly intelligence style publication. And you can go to forcingchange.org, and it's basically a defunct site at this point. It's it's an archive page, and you can grab all the stuff off of it. And then I've got a Convergence. My Substack is called Convergence, and Convergence I try to have weekly material on Convergence. And there you see a picture of my book, Game of Gods. I'm the author of Game of Gods, The Temple of Man in the Age of Re-Enchantment, which came out back in 2018, October 2018. And
wow.
I know. So it's time
Incredible.
to do an update. Seriously, time to do an update.
You know what's just occurring to me, and this is getting me real hyped, and maybe I'm, getting a little hyped too early in the episode. But you've always described your work correctly as, analyzing trends and movements and things like that. And of course, that's a lot of the Burning Man research is about that. But Gons, it's kind of fun because, of course, we started doing what we do back in 2012, just sort of exploring and talking to, researchers about the fringe Christian stuff. But I'm kind of stunned by how our job and our, focus recently, especially since meeting you, has sort of evolved into that. Of course, we do news and we do interviews, but really at the heart of it, it feels like most of what we do now has been incredibly informed by you, Carl, specifically focusing on this trend spotting analysis of the sort of direction of culture as a whole, spotting, paying attention to weird little things that might not seem important in the moment, but it's kind of not even an inside joke, but the joke now with the whole Canary Cry family around the world is like, how many times can we say we told you so? And, it's almost like we have to stop saying it, but it's so hard. And this is so I'm sort of delighted that we've been influenced by you in that direction to kind of look at the broad meta narratives and trends and culture for us in the lens of like individual news stories, but for you it's from the lens of these big, one focus of yours is transformational events.
Correct.
And this, is things. So tell us a little bit about transformational events for
Yeah,
people.
sure. So I'll just give you a little bit more background because there's going to be, it's a segue. There's a pattern to this. So back in the late 1990s, I was going to World Federalist events. I ended up being a delegate at the United Nations Millennium Forum. I've been to other UN and global governance events, all for research, all for the sake of trying to understand the concepts around global governance. At the same time, I was going to interfaith events. I still go to the Parliament of World Religions when they have it. I've been to the last 4 of those, including the virtual event during the COVID years, and trying to understand the interfaith side, because there is a shift towards global religions, or religions moving towards a global narrative as well. And all of these are interlocking. That's the interesting part of this, gentlemen. They all interlock. They converge.
Yeah.
And then on the transhumanist side, man, I jumped into the fray on that one sometime in, I think, 2008, 2007, started digging into it. My first event I went to that was a transhumanist in the flesh, not in VR, because I did, not VR, but I was in Second Life, going to some transhumanist events in Second Life. My first venture into it, going to a real in the flesh transhumanist event, was back in 2010. With the Mormon Transhumanist Association, one of their events. So, I've been down a lot of different roads, and they seem to be divergent. They seem to be on different tracks. And yet, as you unpack the worldview, as you unpack the thinking, the narrative, the vision behind these and other associated movements, everything from psychedelics to understanding, macro economic political ideologies, you'll all of a sudden realize, man, it's all basically saying the same thing, just from a different angle, from a different perspective. And I was working through, all right, if there is a political concept of one world, and there is, because I watched it, I witnessed it. If there is a interfaith religious component to one world, the sense of this is where we're going to find our meaning and our purpose, and there is, I've been there, I've walked down that path. If there's a technological component that says, hey, we can create the kingdom of God on earth by uploading ourselves, by becoming more than what we were intended to be, and there is, there has to also be a cultural artistic expression.
Yeah.
It can't just land in the realm of academic theory or broad ideas. There has to be a cultural, artistic, celebratory way of looking at this. And that's where I ended up running into transformational culture. And I started poking into it, I don't know. I already had Burning Man in my back pocket before the year 2000, but I never really took it, not that I didn't take it seriously, I just didn't take the time to go into it. But I had, I knew it existed. But it wasn't until like 2007, 2008, where all of a sudden was going, yeah, I really kind of need to take another look at this, because the indicators show that this is a point where culture is expressing that re-enchanted global ideal, that concept of, hey, we're going to find our higher purpose, our higher selves in this desert environment. And so transformational culture or evolutionary culture incorporate events like Burning Man. It's not the only one. In fact, there's an ecosystem and a massive global network of these events. Many of them are not connected, but they are connected ideologically or spiritually, certainly from the perspective of I'm encountering a new reality, a new homeland, a place where I can now finally be my true self, and I can do it with a communal kind of fashion. And that began the quest to understand this and to see, okay, how does this remash the ideas of global thinking, spirituality, concepts of the self, and then how does that push out beyond and re-emerge back into culture and pour into the cracks and crevices of our civilization. So yeah, that's kind of how I got to transformational festivals, evolutionary culture. And now a lot of people know my work because of Burning Man and because of this facet, but it's just simply an extension of something that's already been, I've already been wrestling with it for a long time, even before I even knew that there was a cultural expression. And as you dive into this, I mean, it's not just simply going to a couple of events to try to get a sense of where it came from and what it's all about. You unpack the backstory. And as you're unpacking the backstory, I mean, you're running into tech culture, the history of San Francisco, the history of Silicon Valley. You dive into the hippie movement, the counterculture. You end up looking into Stanford and Esalen, and the list just goes on and on and on. The beats, the surrealist movement. I mean, the happenings. It just Rainbow Family. It just unpacks Timothy Leary, Aldous Huxley, Hubbard. The list just endlessly rolls, and you realize that all of a sudden Burning Man is the culmination, the integration, the convergence of all of these ideas, now super packed, heated up in the desert, cooked, like pressure cooked for 8 straight days. And then it explodes back into the culture. Yeah. And that's what this is. I'm looking at Burning Man as kind of like the wall that you bounce the ball off of. It's the rebound, but it's going to change the shape of that ball when it comes back at you.
The idea of these transformational events, of which Burning Man might be the sort of singular, most, like you say, distilled version of that. But you see these things all over the place. Like you say, it's music festivals, it's art festivals, it's these sort of things that become almost like a spiritual mechanism or a spiritual technology by which these ideas, these ideologies, these things go from the sort of esoteric elite think tank realm of theorizing, and it's these festivals, these spiritual mechanisms, these ceremonies, much like we see throughout ancient history. You know, the Eleusinian mysteries and the this and the that, right? That act as the sort of spiritual technology or mechanism to download and disperse, like you say, disseminate. And part of your work and my observation, participation in your work is spotting almost specifically where we see an ideology or a theory or something, presented at Burning Man, whether it's a workshop or a music performance or something like that. And sometimes you can see it the exact moment that it expresses itself and holds its place in society. And suddenly it's not a vague elite theory. It becomes a part of the ideology for secular culture, right? And I wanted to just bring to your attention before, you may already know this, but a great example of one of these. I just let me see if I can put this on screen for us here. Sorry, I could have sent this to you, Guns. But this is one I just came across the other day. And here's a Wired article, and it says, "Inside the Luddite Festival, harnessing Gen Z's rage against big tech. New York City's Summer of Lud Festival is teaching people how to live offline amid the suffocating presence of big tech." And the image here, this is very Burning Man. Their stage has this giant paper mache giant effigy or statue of a goddess with rays of light coming off her head. And it's actually a stage they put on performance. They go in and out of the goddess, as part of the thing. And I won't read the whole article here, but basically this is a brand new festival that, the weirdo artist counterculture people of New York got together and say, hey, we're going to put on a festival that is specifically Luddite. We're celebrating Ludditism, anti-technology. No phones are allowed. There's workshops and booths, and it's all centered around learning how to disconnect from, the technological tyranny, right? Now, of course, Christianity has a long history of this sort of processing, I guess. Of course, you got the Amish and et cetera, and our sort of hypervigilance about the technocratic beast system that's coming on. But specifically, a sort of secular festival, transformational event, specifically to train people, to inspire people, to disseminate sort of their version of anti-tech tyranny into the public. And specifically, as the article states, harnessing, activating this new generation, Gen Z, who has a totally unique relationship to tech than any of the rest of us, right? And so it's interesting because, of course, Burning Man has a long history, but even new festivals, new things like this taking place to respond to the sort of new hyper specific, I guess, situation that we all find ourselves in now.
Oh, that's wild. That's crazy. So a couple of things pop up right away. I mean, you're right. There is this carryover, a carryover effect where Burning Man and the transformational festival scene now has new expressions, new ways of kind of living itself out. Even the progressive Christian community has its own transformational style festival event called the Wild Goose Festival, and it's been around for a long time. In fact, they even admit that their event was shaped in part by the experience of Burning Man. So that's yeah, exactly. So that's important. One thing that comes out with these festivals, these encounters, is, and this is important from a 30,000 foot view, it demonstrates that we're not in a secular age. It demonstrates we're not in that purely materialistic, atheistic sense of what reality should look like or feel like. It is now an expression to say that mankind is spiritual, and that we're not just simply talking about spirituality, we're actively searching it out. We're actively seeking it, not even as individuals, but we're doing it communally. We're doing it as a culture. We are hoping and trying to grasp for something that gives us a higher purpose, or that allows us to feel like we're connected into something bigger than ourselves. And so I look at transformational festivals as a proof, a type of proof text to say that we're past the age of secularism. And it's Jacques Ellul who already in the early 1970s made the argument that secularism is just a pause. It's a stopgap, a short pause between civilization rejecting one religion and accepting the emergence of a new religion.
Very true.
And I'm like, this fits the mold. If you look back, of course, to the early 1970s, late 1960s, you have the very first, you could call them, transformational festival. You have the Trips Festival. You've got the happenings. The late 1960s, early 1970s is basically the seedbed for what this now looks like in a new fashion, but it's still, it was still the same thing. Woodstock fits it in part. Absolutely. It's part of that historical context. But what makes today's transformational festivals a transformational experience is that you are anticipating coming with the idea that this is something that's going to shape you. That this is, you're actually looking for transformation. It's not just simply, oh, I'm going to go to a concert. No, you're not, looking on as a spectator. The understanding is that you are entering as a participant, and that your psyche is going to be reshaped by what you've just encountered. Electric Forest Festival is another one. There's so many. I mean, you can take a look even at the mega concert events like Coachella and Tomorrowland, and even within those, there's the argument being made that they are already exhibiting that sense of, hey, we feel like we're part of something bigger. I mean, I take a look at the whole Tomorrowland festival mystique, and they have their own myth, they have their own legend. Even their staging is designed in such a manner to perpetuate year after year after year this continual big story that we're all connected. We're all part of this global journey together. So what is it saying? Well, it's saying that we have a spiritual world. It's no longer just materialism. In fact, I hate to say it to the atheistic community. I mean, we're thinking especially of Harris and Dawkins and those types. Your train came and went.
I've been saying it for a while that the philosophical materialism was completely demolished in the last couple decades, not just from sort of a cultural thing, but it's the theologians and philosophers in academia really tearing apart those arguments. But to your point, Carl, and I'm teeing up Basil a little bit here, the New York Times would agree with you. And I think
real quick, if I may give you an intro to this, Gons, sorry to interrupt, but just because it's amazing that Carl has resisted from using the term, so you get to bring it to us. We get to, one thing that we cannot stop talking about, and we are just it is such a central part of our analysis now. And of course, you introduced us to it back in your early interviews with us. But specifically, a phrase that we learned from you, and I don't know if you made it up or not, but you brought it to our attention. The subtitle of your book, Game of Gods, is The Temple of Man in the Age of Re-Enchantment. And this age of re-enchantment is so specifically defines and I guess embodies, it puts words to the weird thing that we are seeing happen today. And if we did not have this age of re-enchantment as a sort of pre-understanding, if you had not brought this to our lexicon, we would have been stumbling over ourselves to try to decide or define what we see happening. And it's so specific that it is so right on that it's not only a way for fringe podcasters to describe this anti-secularism or this movement into spirituality we see in mainstream culture, but it's so specific that it's even popping up in the mainstream media, and not just on Daily Mail or something, but specifically we have, what is it, the New York Times, Gods? The New York Times writing an article about how we have entered the age of re-enchantment. And of course, it's the New York Times, so they have to describe what they see actually happening, because we all feel the age of re-enchantment happening. But, their job as the secular narrative crafters, they have to put it in this interesting framing on this headline. we are sliding back into the Middle Ages. And so you think, okay, what do they mean by the Middle Ages? What is that? And it doesn't take an analyst or a trend spotter or a podcaster to pick out and find exactly, what they're trying to say. They are straight up saying it in the exact words that you've been describing it to us here. Gans, I saw you highlighting things. Did you have a specific way you wanted to go?
Yeah. I think, to your point, Basil, about the word re-enchantment, it's one thing to have an article titled "We're Sliding Back into the Middle Ages," but what I was going to say was, Carl, that the New York Times is agreeing with you. The mainstream media is agreeing with you with the premise of re-enchantment. Let me read a little spot here. And the whole point of this article, interestingly enough, is that with the emergence of technology, the whole secular movement and the move towards more tech was supposed to erase magic and these types of enchanted ideas, but rather it did the opposite.
I see you have your highlighted spot. Can I read one paragraph? It's about the fifth paragraph, and then sure. I want you to go to where you are. But so they start out the article talking about Tucker Carlson and his story about being attacked by a demon, an interesting, high-profile spiritual experience that a lot of people, know about. They bring up the FEMA officer coming out and talking about how he was teleported, Then they talk about, how the Catholic Church has seen a resurgence of people showing up, how the churches are packed recently with new converts. They also talk about the Orthodox Church, which has been a very specific on that. A specific interest of mine, seeing this again with the analyst's eyes, seeing this very interesting draw towards the Orthodox forms of Christianity, these sort of mystical, these sort of, that sort of thing, not just evangelical Protestant American Christianity. And they say here, it says, the backdrop of all this is the peculiar atmosphere of contemporary public life. So comparing these spiritual experiences with the secular life, which people are moving out of or being forced out of, contemporary public life, claustrophobic, faintly hallucinatory, where what we know as real feels like sand shifting under our feet. The First Lady, Melania Trump, walks a humanoid robot down a White House red carpet and later tells the audience to imagine a future humanoid educator named Plato. A former intelligence official testifies under oath that the United States has been secretly retrieving and reverse engineering crashed UFOs for decades, and the non-human biologics have been recovered. So it's really this full-scale, full saturation of public secular life with this sort of odd re-enchanted thing. And it says, demonic vexation, teleportation, increased interest in religious practice, those phenomena are all signs that life feels to many increasingly charged with unseen forces. You might say it has been re-enchanted. There's a widespread feeling that the material explanation is no longer sufficient, that something uncanny, maybe even numinous, is diffused into the texture of ordinary American life.
Wow.
Right? It's like could come
golf
straight.
Clap for Carl. I think we all need to just
it could be
bow
an
to
excerpt
Carl.
from Game of Gods. And you do go ahead if you have a response.
Yeah. I'm just blown away. That's wild. I mean, it fits exactly. They're right.
It could be an excerpt from Game of Gods. I mean, it's just right there. Yeah.
Yikes.
And
absolutely yikes.
And it includes everything too. They're talking about demonology, teleportation, which is like a totally unrelated, but like kind of related.
Robotics.
Going back. Yeah, robotics, transhumanism. They even go in the next article. They talk about astrology and witchcraft, and connect it to like LGBTQ. And even the author who is writing the article saying like, her point is like, hey, this re-enchantment, it feels like we're going to the Middle Ages. It feels like we're going backwards, but then makes a legit case for why this is happening. And like, you know, it's like because she's New York Times, she has to find a way to say this is bad, but she has no room, no wiggle room. She has to tell the truth of how it is, which is this is happening on a broad scale. And of course, you know, she even says, during my first pregnancy, I received Reiki and energy healing, treatment for my unborn son. It's now offered at major hospitals across the country. So you have like medical care, like a political flashpoint is infused with this re-enchantment. And then she says, what is going on? Why is the world re-enchanting itself now? And then goes into sort of a history as she sees it.
It's interesting because it's not re-enchanting itself now. It's been in the process for a while.
Yes, right.
But it's fascinating to see that the New York Times is finally coming on speed. I guess I need to send them a copy of my book.
That's what I'm saying. Part of me
trying
wonders...
to share your book to a lot of people out there right now, just tagging you or tagging your book or something.
If she's a good journalist, she may have read your book, you know, and of course That's true. Doesn't want to credit you because it's the New York Times. They can't share the
term
real
sources. Yeah, so the term re-enchantment isn't my inventing. Mm-hmm. Rather, it came through observation of this long shift, and then hearing the phrase being used by very specific individuals over the last number of years, individuals, names that for the most part, people just won't know, like Ervin Laszlo, who was a very important individual with the Club of Rome, and also very involved in some of the Stanford projects in the 1970s. And I think it was in 2005 when he was at a World Goodwill meeting, which is basically another division of Lucis Trust. He was using the term re-enchantment, that the world needed to be re-enchanted again, that needed to find its sense of purpose within oneness. And then, you know, going back even further to taking a look at how the Club of Rome in the 1970s was talking about the necessity for a new myth. Mm-hmm. And then Stanford Research Institute was talking about the changing images of man, which was essentially saying the same thing. What was happening at the Esalen Institute, and then considering too what was taking shape within the realm of international geopolitics as it fit with sustainable development and the new green thinking that received a global platform in 1972 through the work of Marie Strong and Wayne Kynes. And I knew Wayne Kynes personally, and I'd also spent a day with Maurice, but I knew Wayne's personally to the point where he shared a lot of stuff privately. Very, very interesting. He only lived a few miles away from where I currently live. Really important figures, arguably probably the two most important figures in setting the tone for the environmental movement. And as you unpack the global sustainable development environmental concepts, you run into stuff that just absolutely screams re-enchantment. I'll read you a quote from Game of Gods, but this is Boutros Ghali back in 1992 at the very, very end of the Rio Earth Summit. In fact, these are his closing statements. I should like to conclude by saying that the spirit of Rio must create a new form of good citizenship. After loving his neighbor as the Bible required him to, post-Rio man must also love the world, including the flowers, birds, and trees, every part of that natural environment that we are constantly destroying. Over and above the moral contract with God, over and above the social contract concluded with men, we must now conclude an ethical and political contract with nature, with this earth to which we owe our very existence and which gives us life. To the ancients, the Nile was a god to be venerated, as was the Rhine, an infinite source of European myths, or the Amazonian forest, the mother of forests. Throughout the world, nature was the abode of the divinities that gave the forest, the desert, or the mountains a personality which commanded worship and respect. The earth had a soul. To find that soul again, to give it new life, that is the essence of Rio. And when I read that, And I read that, my goodness, many, many, many years ago. I was picking up what was already being put down in the mid 1990s, early 1990s, and I was like, wow, that is setting the stage. That already is, and at that time I didn't have the language for it, but that is re-enchantment right there. That sense of purpose, that sense of meaning is in this mythical, let's call it a pagan construct. And that's where we find our sense of direction. And we have to give that to the whole world. We have to give the world that vision, which is what happened during 1970 for the very first Earth Day when they published the Environmental Handbook. It gave them that same sense of, this is your re-enchanted purpose in life. This is the whole reason for your existence. And then when you combine that with ecstatic encounters, with the sense of celebration that comes with events like Burning Man, now it's not just
help.
Psychedelics, 100%. Now it's not just abstract. It becomes a feeling. It's something that you now participate in with your senses, your emotions. Speaking of psychedelics, so Gons and Basil, you guys will find this interesting. In March, I was at South by Southwest in Austin, Texas. And by the way, South by Southwest has a lot of intersections with Burning Man. I heard Burning Man being referenced probably more times than I could count, or that I could care to count. I went to a workshop hosted by Christopher Koch, very, very prominent neuroscientist involved in the study of consciousness to try to understand what is consciousness. And a number of years ago, a few decades ago, I believe, he had famously put out a kind of a challenge that at a certain point in time, because of good study, good scientific analysis, we would have a materialist understanding for consciousness. That there would be a materialist theory for consciousness. And there he was at South by Southwest telling us, I was wrong. Not only am I wrong, not only is there no materialist understanding, no true materialist concept or theory or understanding of consciousness, it has not just simply failed us, it has failed us catastrophically. That was, it was a huge admission. And so he was very clear, we're not going to go back to religion. And by that, we all could infer pretty easily, he meant Christianity. We're not going back there. And this is how it parallels the sense of re-enchantment. We're not going back to that. We're just not. Where do we go? Well, we're going to now search out the mystical, and we're going to pursue psychedelics, because maybe this offers us a gateway to give us a sense of how we can at least express and feel internally how consciousness might be and what it maybe is. It was a fascinating conversation when you realize that, you're just simply giving us this re-enchanted worldview. We're not going to go back to Christianity, like, heaven's sake, no.
Yeah, which sounds more like a desire or a command of his than like an observation, right?
Right.
I mean, maybe it is also partly observation, but he's kind of saying like, this is coming. Re-enchantment is coming. You can only keep people away from the numinous for so long. And, we must take action, because if we don't take action, people might find themselves going back to God, like going back to Christianity, which is kind of what we've been noticing a lot lately, is like, especially in the process of people kind of waking up and seeing, the narrative, the worldview that they have is not necessarily close to reality, and that there's sort of a control mechanism guiding them. We have seen people coming to the crossroads of like, okay, the spiritual is true, and they kind of eventually have to make a choice, and their fork in the road, and they have to choose one, is either Christ or New Age or whatever, the non-Christian re-enchantment is. But the fact that the idea that secularism was sort of known as just a pause and like a reset button before the world can kind of go from this, at least the West, this sort of like generally and reliably Christian culture, to the new thing that they want to guide us away from is so interesting, because that's, when we were in it, when I was a kid, in church and stuff, the idea that the world had strayed from God seemed so permanent. Like, it didn't even really I couldn't even imagine a culture becoming Christian. And you know what? We'll see what happens. But, we have been seeing this interest in various forms of Christianity, sometimes even the more mystical or contemplative forms of Christianity. But it's even reflected in the article. And I don't want to make this whole thing an analysis of this article, but just to mention, after the question, why is the world re-enchanting itself now? It says, in 1917, the sociologist Max Weber argued that a long process of rationalization culminating in modernity was eliminating mysterious, incalculable forces. That's in quote from the world. Science would explain, technology would master, and magic would disappear. For a brief stretch of modern history, he seemed right. The enduring human instinct to believe in the otherworldly declined as empiricism, common evidentiary standards, and for the shortest period of all, mass media produced a rough consensus about what was real. Now we seem to be sliding back. So, of course, it's a bad thing from her perspective. But even that recognition that mass media produced a rough consensus, this admission that like mass media, propaganda, this whole ecosystem, suddenly relatively new and modern, basically since the 1917, was this like worldview control mechanism, this worldview dictating the perception of reality to everybody. And they very successfully were able to convince everybody that, materialism and secularism was the truth and anything else is poppycock. And then it so happens that at the same time recently, where the mainstream media has basically lost control of the narrative, the institution of mass media is totally in the gutter. And at the same time, where it's lost all of its credibility, that's when we see this inevitable resurgence of re-enchantment. Sort of seems unstoppable, and it comes in many forms. But yeah, the fact that it was a pause button and not a permanent state of affairs, shows that God is God and I am not.
Yes. What I find fascinating with the history of re-enchantment, when you consider Max Weber's time period, right before his some of his famous essays were being published, when you consider what was taking place in the mid 1800s, roughly from 1860s to the 1890s, at the height of what would be considered modernity, the age of the machine, there was a burgeoning sense of the search for spirituality, the search for the esoteric, the search for the occult. You see an explosion of interest in theosophy. That's when it comes of age. Esoteric Freemasonry, Rosicrucian orders. That's all that kind of percolates at that point in time for a very specific period. There seems to be a real interest. The 1893 Parliament of the World Religions demonstrates that. When you take a look at then what happened at upstate New York, all of a sudden you have an explosion of spiritualism. Mormonism is birthed. You've got all kinds of bizarre sub-movements, religious sub-movements that came out of that time period, and out of some very specific locations, upstate New York being one of those. But that was in the height of what would be considered modernity, secularism, this age of the machine and efficiency and industrialization. And it seems that as we move in a technological direction, that there is a counter move back to something where we're looking for the spiritual, we're looking for the religious, we're looking for that the numinous, that type of thing. That was specific for that time. It never went away, obviously. It just changed shape and moved around and percolated and popped off into the background. But then with our modern age, with our contemporary period, with our new technological civilization where it's all digital, it's not industrial, but it's all digital, we again see the same thing. Not necessarily the construction of brand new religious movements. There are some things like that that are taking shape, but they're small in comparison to the cultural movement, which is this cultural push to find some sense of spiritual purpose and meaning. And anything from Reiki to UFOs to golly, there's so much of this. We would call it the New Age, but this isn't the New Age. It takes it one step further, because the New Age has a more of a consumerist type of marketplace spirituality. I'm going to dabble in this thinly spread smorgasbord of spiritual practices to try to find my divine higher self. Whereas Re-Enchantment said it's about the we. It's about the collective. It's about the community doing this together in a deeper spiritual group experience.
Yeah.
And that's where things like Burning Man all of a sudden have a special relevance, because it exemplifies that. What's interesting in all of this is, okay, so if the 1800s, 1900s had, places that had hotbeds of this, like upstate New York, if there's a place in North America specifically that really cooked this stuff up from the 1960s on, it's your state. It's California. California has been the spiritual kind of the
wellspring almost.
Yeah, the test bed. It's the petri dish. And Burning Man is a California product.
Yeah.
It's a San Francisco product. Happens in Nevada, but it's a San Francisco product.
Right.
Yeah. And that concept is being driven into new industries. We'll maybe touch on that a little later, but I want to round back a little bit, just back to that New York Times article, the part that I had highlighted, and to set it up. There's a quote. It's attributed to G.K. Chesterton. I don't know if he was the one who said it, but it's this idea, you kind of hear it often if you're in apologetic circles and stuff like that. The idea is, when people stop believing in God, they don't believe nothing, they believe in anything. And the author of the New York Times article alludes to that a little bit at the end of her article here. She says, and let me pull it up here real quick. She says, I do not believe that re-enchantment in itself is the main problem. After all, re-enchantment doesn't mean irrational or untrue or conspiracy, though it can lead there. Rather, it's the reemergence of one of the oldest and most durable features of human experience, the sense that the world is bigger than what human knowledge can, at a particular moment, measure. It's not a coincidence that many of our most famous scientists were obsessed with ideas that we'd now find crazy. Thomas Edison, for example, claimed to be working on a device that would try to receive the voices of the dead. But enchantment mutates when it's untethered from a foundation, from a community that acts as a check on the most wild and destructive instincts. And it talks about, AI, psychosis and stuff. And then
Burning
at the end,
Man,
she says,
a good example
of
their
the foundation
attempts to make a community to guide the re-enchantment.
Yes. And at the end, it says, the world we're moving into will look more like the one before the modern era than like the one we grew up in. It will be saturated with the supernatural. Everyone will believe in something. The question is, in what? So that sort of sets up this. She understands that this unhinges the whole secular worldview, the materialistic worldview. But interestingly enough, in the last few weeks, as we've been really touching this topic on Canary Cry News Talk, I mean, I think I showed you, right, I had up on the screen some of our episode titles from the last, 10, 15 episodes. It's a lot of re-enchantment. It's a lot of enchantment. It's a lot of this stuff. And we're doing this cultural analysis, much like you've been doing for so many years. And I ran across this book that's being published on Oxford. So this is an Oxford book that's being published. It's brand new. It's called The Foundations of Re-Enchantment.
You know what's crazy, Gons? Yeah. I am so sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
But I just purchased this book.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I don't know if I found it because of you or whatever, but I ran across it, and I'm ashamed to say it was kind of expensive.
Yeah, it's $100. Yeah,
I did purchase it, and it is.
Yeah, no. I told you about it Because
You told me
one of
about it.
the
Okay.
Yeah, it was a solo
Yeah.
show that I did that I found it. It's called The Foundations of Re-Enchantment, Freemasonry, Theosophy, and the Occult Revival. And it's by Christopher Coombe. And his argument, it's very interesting. I obviously, I have not read the book. There's an Oxford University Press page that goes through the table of contents, and they have little summaries on everything. And from what I understand, Chris Coombe's argument, more or less, is that during the Enlightenment and materialism and the rise of that secularism, that period, the kind of pause that you were talking about, couldn't have happened without actually the occult philosophies undergirding all of it.
Right.
And much of it was to push back against biblical Christianity. That was sort of the main reason for wanting to do this, but none of it was possible. The whole Enlightenment and secularism and the advancement of science and technology and all these things were not possible without occultism and this esoteric philosophy undergirding it. And Chris Coombe argues that it was specifically Freemasonry that was the distributors of this ideology behind the scenes, kind of like the Wizard of Oz, behind the curtain, making things move about, that created this sort of secular culture. And so now we're at this point where it's really like the Wizard of Oz, the curtain's being moved away and it's just a guy, it's just a random guy, but it is occultism. And, it seems like now it's in a different form. It's new age. It's crystals. You talked about psychedelics.
It can take any form. Here. Like that's the thing with esotericism is that it can take any form. It can even take a Christian form. Yeah, but we're talking about the 100-year period, Gans, that you're bringing up. It's almost like, whoever esoteric, whatever, Freemason, secret society, whatever you want to call that, knew that it's like a wildfire. You have to burn down the forest so new things can come up. And if there was a methodical attempt to deconstruct the Western Christian view of reality or culture or whatever, it's like they knew you had to totally burn it down, get secularism, materialism, scientific, the worldview, all that. You had to burn down all spiritual understanding. And then once it's all gone, then you can start to grow back the forest in your image. And like their attempt here is to burn down the forest and grow up, the new foliage in their sort of esoteric, pagan, whatever. Like you said, it's like New Age doesn't even really describe it anymore. Yeah. But pagan doesn't fully describe it. I mean, it kind of does, but so
you say foliage, but I say fungus just because I have this
it probably is. You're probably more right. That's exactly right. And I mentioned this fork in the road, and I've made this allusion several times in recent episodes where like people are finding that once you wake up, you see what's going on. You have a fork in the road eventually. You have to choose one. One is Christ, and the other one is that hodgepodge, whether it's New Age or pagan or esotericism or magic or tarot or something, right? And of course, we see that the trajectory of the sort of control mechanisms of culture, including transformational events, including these things, are there ready to catch people and be a signpost to say, hey, we know you have a choice right now, and one side is Christ and the other side is everything else. Let us guide you away from Christ to do everything else here.
The thing, though, is that what is the vehicle that's bringing people to that side of just the hodgepodge is the secular institutions of yesterday. Right. You look at this Live Science article. It sounds so impossible. Students studying fungus that makes users hallucinate tiny people may be on the verge of a scientific breakthrough. Mm-hmm. So this is ethnobiology. It's all this stuff, but it's sort of carrying the science itself. Secularism itself is starting to carry the torch of the esoteric, and they're putting the quantizing all of this mystical stuff. That's why we're moving towards quantum computers and all these different things that are woo woo. But they're sort
study of consciousness, the field of consciousness.
They're able to measure these things and put names to it, labels to it. And that's what I think is going to sort of encompass all of the re-enchantment concepts, because it'll be sort of the theory of everything. It's going to explain everything. Your thoughts on some of this, Carl?
Oh, golly, guys. This is I the nerd in me, the geek in me is like, wow, this is cool.
That's what we're here for, baby.
But it doesn't this just demonstrate the fact that how hungry we have become?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking at this and I'm going, all right, we need to understand this. We need to understand it not just from the sense of, hey, this is academically really cool stuff, because it's pointing us to something, but it actually points us to the opportunity that we have as Christians, because now we have the ability to walk into these. We should have the ability to walk into these spaces and have conversations. We should understand where they're coming from so that we can enter into these conversations with a true re-enchantment. And I've been wrestling with, what does a true re-enchantment from a biblical point of view look like? And the thought has struck me. It's the resurrection. So I've had some great conversations in the last little while with a couple of buddies who we go back and forth about questions of the age of the earth and a global flood versus a local flood and all these fun things, the ice age versus the flood. I'm in the perspective that the ice age have some real problems with physics, but a global flood fits the question that the ice age brings up in many respects. But anyways, I digress. We have these huge conversations, and I have to remind myself at the end of it, all we're doing is talking about matter in motion. That's all of this is. The age of the earth, the dimensions, and the movement of the universe. It's cool stuff. Don't get me wrong. I get really excited about some of this stuff, but it's just matter in motion. And then I think about the resurrection and I'm like, oh, that's bigger than the universe. That is personality, soul, spirit infused into dead matter. I can put matter into motion. I can go outside with my tractor and I can go push dirt around. Matter in motion, itty bitty nothingness. It's just an itty bitty reflection of what happens on a bigger scale. Forces, pressures, and now I got a big dirt pile. Whip-de-doo. And while matter in motion at a cosmic level is lots of fun to talk about, when all of a sudden I think about the resurrection, I'm going, oh boy, that's a different category altogether. And what strikes me as I'm thinking through the Christian answer to the question of re-enchantment is a book by Jason Mankey on transformational witchcraft. And I've met Jason and had a number of conversations with him at different pagan events. He's well-known neo-pagan, a well-known Gardarian Wiccan. And he makes a very interesting argument. He comes out of a Christian background. You could argue all kinds of different things about what that might look like. But he comes out of a self-confessed Christian background, and he makes a claim: how is it that you Christians have made the resurrection of a dead guy a boring subject?
Totally.
Wow.
Dude, you are blowing my mind. This was just something I was thinking about yesterday because for those who listen to my other show, Canary Cry Clubhouse, I've been talking about this experience that I've had for a couple weeks now, and I'm just encountering God in just a wonderful way. I'm just having this wonderful time with, the Holy Spirit and things like this. And one thing that came to my mind was like, when we're talking about the resurrection and of course the gospel, and I want to make sure to be clear, the gospel is the number one essential, most important thing in the universe. Straight up, right there. Salvation, the basic, whatever. We don't even need to get weird about it. There's just the gospel of Jesus Christ is number one. And sometimes the attitude or even the literal response I get from, secular people about it is like, yeah, okay, I get it. I mean, you're asking me to believe that a guy rose from the dead and that I can go to heaven. Okay. I don't know. I'm not very motivated by the idea of going to heaven. I don't even know if it exists, that sort of things. And God bless everybody's on their own journey. I believe that God's got a plan for everybody to get them. But I was thinking, and I'm like, you know what? It's hard to describe to a secular person my relationship to the gospel, because it's not just my ticket to heaven. The resurrection of Jesus Christ is not just simply a ticket to heaven, but it is everything. The mysteries of the universe are contained within the Logos, Jesus, the Logos, the code of reality, the reality beneath the reality, who is here before everything, manifest as a man, Jesus Christ, living a perfect life, dying, resurrecting for the forgiveness of our sins. It's not just a ticket to heaven. It's not just what it is to me now, but it contains the secrets of the universe in there. Like, I'm trying to explain to secular people, it's not just about being a good boy and going to heaven, or living a good life, although it is also that, but that all the deep yearnings of the mysteries of reality that you have are contained within the gospel. And yes, you have to take a step into it in its literal written form, but then in there, when God is with you and you are with God, it opens up every yearning that you have to understand mystery. And, this age of re-enchantment, they talk about it in a cultural sense, and they're kind of dissecting the bird a little bit to understand what's going on here. But at its core, re-enchantment, the understanding that there's a supernatural unseen layer of reality is not something that fills the void when trust in science and institutions is gone. That's the reversal they're doing here. They're saying, no, re-enchantment happens when trust in science is gone. And so enchantment comes in to fill the void because we need something. No, you go back to the garden. Adam's original experience of creation, walking with God, being with God, and then the fall being a separation of man with their sort of original relationship with God. And everything that follows for the entirety of human history is man responding to this empty thing in him. We know that we are supposed to be with the Father, to be aligned with God and in relationship, but we just can't figure out how exactly, and we try everything to try to reconnect with, the all-powerful creator of the universe, even in science, even in all these follies and these attempts that, even the secular people have, and even when they hate Jesus and they hate Christianity, their love for science, everything that they do pursue is just them pursuing connection with God again, just in a not great way, just not in the right way, just with their own power, thinking that they themselves can reconnect with this original state of man through their own power. And the gospel, of course, comes in, answers that question, but it's not just, oh, now I know how to pray and go to church and I can be a good boy and live life. It just opens up, it reconnects you with the way that God made man in relationship to the mysteries of everything. And there's an opportunity here now, just like you said, there's an opportunity for us to step in to these places or these conversations or whatever. And with that understanding, encounter these people who are becoming re-enchanted, but have just don't have the right idea. They just haven't heard the gospel in a way that has gripped them yet. And it's different for everybody. God grabs each and every one of us in a different special way. But anywho, you're totally right. I mean, this is part of the this is part of the mandate that we as Christians have to respond to the moment that we're in.
Yes. The passage that comes to my mind is, in him, Jesus Christ, all things consist.
Yeah.
Hold on. That's all things. That is spiritually all things. That is physically all things.
Mhm.
He's holding it all together. Hello. That's the greatest mystery of all.
Yeah.
That is re-enchantment, if you want to use that phraseology. That is, okay, so this year's Burning Man main theme is Axis Mundi.
Yeah.
Jesus is the true, like
Mhm.
the true Axis Mundi, who bridges it all together.
Yeah. Axis Mundi, for
Period.
those who don't know, I had to look it up when I saw the theme for this year's Burning Man, but it's the pivot point of the world, the point on which the world rotates, right? That's
Yep.
Logos. That's Jesus before his manifest form, right? But before he became man, he always was. He was there at the beginning. He is the Axis Mundi. And, you know, we needed a man version. Like, he had to manifest because it's just too big. We're unable to connect as Adam did. We are fallen, and that's just, it's just mind blowing. It's just it's so specific. It's so specific.
And it should get us excited.
Yeah.
It really should get us excited. Like, I mean, and part of the conversation I was having with a couple of my friends was, I mean, I'm in an off-grid house. I've got a lot of bush around me. I've got a little river. Every spring, it reveals stuff that I find along the gravel beds, fossilized bison teeth, arrowheads, cool stuff, just fun stuff. Okay. And then it automatically elicits conversations. One of them was online, and then I've had a few other conversations, just, you know, one-on-one kind of conversations about all this stuff. And we're like, you know, looking at theories and concepts of how the world formed, and how gravel beds and, you know, rock formations and all the, you know, the strata and all that fun stuff. It's geology. It's cool. I collect rocks. It's cool stuff. It's just matter.
Mm-hmm.
It's just matter in motion. Rising from the dead is magnitudes more powerful, potent than anything when it comes to matter in motion. It is far beyond just matter.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden that just blew me away, because I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, 6 days could have been 6 minutes as far as God's concerned.
Yeah.
He did it specifically in a certain way, but it was just matter in motion. He rose from the dead. Hello.
Yeah, I am, and I want to take the conversation in this direction, because what I'm noticing also as part of this conversation of re-enchantment and the Axis Mundi being something that is pretty familiar to all kinds of world religions. Everyone has an Axis Mundi. You know, the Tower of Babel can be considered one. But
the Nordic world tree.
Yes, the world tree. All these, so it's got this through line with all religions. To your point about trying to bring this one world religious idea, you know, the Bible does talk about the wheat and the tares growing together. And, you know, I think it's easy to be like, hey, we're Christian over here. They're kind of secular, new agey, mystical, whatever over there. But I think it's going to start becoming much more confusing for maybe the uninitiated, if I can use that term, because I've started to notice that Christians are using not only the word re-enchantment, but they are talking about this phenomenon. So just as a couple examples here, I have there's a podcast called Re-Enchanting. it's yes, Re-Enchanting. It's by a group called the Seen and Unseen. So, you know, I'm thinking, okay, what are these guys about? And you go to their website, and it says here, Seen and Unseen is an invitation to see the world differently. In a world often fixated on the seen, but blind to unseen realities, it brings fresh Christian perspectives to the issues we're talking about. And it says here, we're not interested in nostalgic return to Christendom, but we do believe that the Christian faith with 2,000 years of reflection on what it means to be human and where we came from, still has much to offer the modern world. And the podcast is actually hosted by, or it's co-hosted by a couple people, a young gal named Belle Tyndall and also Justin Briley. And Justin Briley, I don't know if you're familiar with him, Carl, but he's a British lad, and he had a podcast called Unbelievable. And it was a pretty popular apologetics podcast where he would get scientists and atheists to debate theologians and Christian philosophers. And it was a very big show when I was really doing my research and digging, the late 2000s. This podcast was really big for my, sort of learning and stuff, just hearing the different debates and arguments and conversations between believers, non-believers at a scholarly level. So I haven't made my decision on what this all means yet, but I'm noticing that there is maybe an understanding from a Christian worldview of what re-enchanting might mean. And then also there's another fella, his name is Jonathan Peg. I don't know if it's Peg or Pegu or something. And he's got this organization, the Symbolic World, and they're actually putting on a conference at some point. I believe it's in September this year. And if you go to this website, the event schedule, it says here 3 days of transformative talks, panels, and community gatherings. Now, Jonathan Peg is an Eastern Orthodox Christian. So he comes from the Orthodox perspective. And I don't know everything about him, but I've been kind of digging into some of his work, and he talks a lot about symbology and mythology and how there's a crossroads of psychology and theology, and how we can learn from the different mythologies, whether it's Genesis and the Tower of Babel or Spider-Man or Icarus, or, he kind of brings this idea that mythologies are a through line for human experience and how we can learn from it. So I wouldn't say I'm having a hard time, but I'm starting to notice that a lot more Christians in the more traditional sense, whether it's Orthodox or Catholic or even evangelicals, are starting to discuss the re-enchantment. And on one hand, I'm going, great, this is great. We can point to Christ. This is, it can catch the people really looking into this topic to lead them to Christ. But there's also a part of me thinking, is this dangerous? Because it's kind of meshing the two worlds of the in terms of vocabulary. And I can't look into these people's hearts. I have no idea where they're really coming from. But and I don't know enough of their material to really have an informed decision about some of this stuff. But I am noticing that they're using the terminology of re-enchantment, transformative events, things of that nature, to refer to a more Christian umbrella. So any thoughts on that? And have you seen any of this in some of your research?
Yeah, I have. I mean, I think that there is a number one, you absolutely are right, Gons, that there should be a concern regarding the language and the approach that we're looking to take.
An attention or an intention. Yeah.
Yes. I would take a look even from, so I would just quickly back it up a little bit. I have seen it more from the progressive side, where there has been a move towards finding and having experiences that will now dovetail with the ideological positions that typically are happening within the progressive space, and specifically because of the rise of the Wild Goose Festival and how the Wild Goose Festival came out of the Transformational Festival movement. There are a few other Christian events like that too, that kind of it bridges the artistic, the communal, it bridges all these things together to have this immersive experience. But what you just brought out, in terms of trying to find a Christian, or to use a Christian sense of language around what re-enchantment might entail and what it is, it's an area that we have to be careful. I think we have to know exactly what re-enchantment entails, what it is, what let's call it the spiritual world is saying, or the alternative spiritual world is saying, and then be able to counter, not with the same language, the same yearning, because that's almost what I'm hearing
Yeah.
often. There are other Christian authors out there who are talking about we have to find a sense of re-enchantment. Okay, it's not as far as what I've seen within the environmental movement, but it's a fascinating parallel. If you take a look at how did the Christian world respond to the environmental movement of the 1970s and then all the way through up to this point. Well, it wasn't challenging the assumptions of the environmental movement. It certainly wasn't that. It was more along the lines of we adopt and accept the critique of the environmental movement, that Christianity bears the responsibility, specifically with Lynn White Jr.'s historical essay on the ecological crisis from the late 1960s. And we now adopt the language. We even now parrot. We end up parroting the same solutions that the world was giving us.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, we were fundamentally then no different. We just literally just pushed a chair up to the global table and said, hey, we're here. We're going to speak the same language, say the same things.
We want to be included. Like being included for being included's sake, right?
Yes. And so we will go so far as to even suggest and formulate and advance the exact same responses that the world does, politically, even ideologically. So I do have a concern. Now, I'm not saying that the two examples you gave, Gons, represent this, because I don't know either of those. But I do have always a concern that we tend to parrot what the world already is doing. That said, how now do we speak to this in a way that is honest, truthful, different, but far deeper?
Yeah.
And I think that's where we end up having to stop and go, okay, what is the fundamental difference?
I think this is perfect. This is so perfect. Yeah. I'm looking at the time. I want to make sure we're respectful of our time. This is perfect. And of course, the Axis Mundi of our relationship with you here, Carl, is the project, the Burning Man research project that you have been doing for a very long time, that in 2018 you so graciously allowed me to come and document and participate, and we've been doing it ever since. It's a very special, I consider it a very special and precious part of what God has allowed me to do with our work here. I'm so enthusiastic. It informs the way I do all the rest of my work. It's very special. And that is the Camp of the Unknown God. Every year, you lead a team out to Burning Man, and your camp, your little sanctuary out there is called the Camp of the Unknown God. And whenever we bring up Burning Man, every single time, reliably, and I thank God that it's so reliable, right? I don't have to question whether or not this is going to happen, but reliably, when I bring up the Camp of the Unknown God and the Burning Man research projects, there are people who immediately respond in the expected way, which is, that's for sinners. Burning Man is for stinky hippies. It's just a reason to party. It's just, it's this den of sin. Christians have no responsibility to go in and be light and salt. And there's this sort of triggering of like, oh, well, you guys are that's just way too far. Okay. You just need to stay and say your prayers and go to church. But give us an introduction to the Camp of the Unknown God and what that entails, what is the purpose, what actually goes on, and then this will transition amazingly. I want to touch upon the theme for this Burning Man, because the theme of every Burning Man has its own theme, and those who have been with us for a while, it's a very important thing that sets up not just our understanding going in and what our mission is for the kingdom, but also it gives the first hints of the direction of the analysis of the trends and forces to guide the world in whatever the powers that be want to do. We've seen it from transhumanism, robotics, metamorphosis. I mean, it's always incredible. And as we mentioned before, Axis Mundi, I want to dive into this because it's just so perfectly, I think, it is the opportunity not just for the team to go out and have a clear understanding of where Christians, where the intersection, or where the friction points, or where the interaction between Christians going to Burning Man and the culture of Burning Man can meet and discuss and communicate for the glory of God. But for those who are just now coming into the knowledge of the camp of the unknown God, describe your work for them, please.
Okay, cool. I love the segue. And I'm going to quickly pause on what you had just described as a stereotypical understanding of Burning Man. And I'm going to just say this, Basil, that as you were laying it out, which is the response that you and Gons have received, it's the response that we have received, that's not a place for Christians. It's morally heathenistic. It is raw. It is gross. It is stinky. When I hear that language, the thought that comes to mind is, you have just described public universities and the internet.
Yeah, totally. Oh my gosh, that's so good. Yeah.
I mean, I didn't realize that there was a caveat, an asterisk on the passage that said, go into all the world.
Yeah.
Except there.
Boom.
Except, over and over again. No, there is a place, and if God has prepared the heart and has, for some strange reason, guided you into that, I'm thankful. I don't have the ability to go into, let's say, the realm of dealing with people who are involved in the sex trade. That's not me.
Right.
I have nothing. I've got nothing to offer that.
Yeah.
However, in 2019, we had one of our team members who has, because of her prior experience, has that ability to speak into that in a powerful way.
Yeah.
That's not my field. For whatever bizarre reason, and again, I think this is part of that background of just wrestling through, is there a global celebratory cultural side to the sense of this one world, this broader global, Babel purpose, the new Tower of Babel. That's how I ended up going in 2017, trying to really wrestle through and hammer that through. So in 2017, that was my first burn. I went because already I had it in my mind, the subtitle for my book, The Temple of Man in the Age of Re-Enchantment. That was already set in stone for what the book would be subtitled for when it be released in 2018. That year, 2017, the man at Burning Man was placed in his own temple, his own pagoda. And that became a controversial point for the Burning Man community. This is the first time that the man had a roof over his head and was effectively placed in a temple. And when I found out that the theme that year, radical ritual, because that was 2017's theme, would have this element, I'm like, I cannot but go. I have to go. And I had already been in contact back and forth with a fellow who had been going for a while, Bob Worley. And the two of us together, and I give Bob credit, he's been interacting with the Burn community long time, years before I ever did.
Wonderful man.
Absolutely. And I brought it from a different angle. He has one angle, I brought it from a different angle, and everybody who participates at the Camp of the Unknown God will be bringing a different angle into it, because everybody we all have a different personality. We're all wired a little bit differently.
God really assembles the team every year. It's just like God assembles the Avengers every year, and every person has their own flavor and superpowers. It's amazing.
And it really comes out during the course of that week.
Mhm.
It truly does. When you always see, oh, how God has equipped us in different ways, and it somehow always works. And so 2017, we started this little camp called the Camp of the Unknown God. At that point, it was just two people, Bob and I, and we had not even met. In fact, we only met the night before the burn started. I had arrived in Cedarville, California after being lost on the road. I think I drove an extra 300 miles or so that day, and I arrived after midnight in Cedarville, California. It was an absolutely mind-blowing trip.
It always is. It
Yeah,
always is.
exactly. I had a truck accident that totaled my truck. It was just a nightmare to finally get to the burn. And so we set up this camp. We wanted to see, is there a place? Can we have a conversation? Now, there has been other Christians who've been going to Burning Man, but this is the first time that we kind of took it from a different approach, which was more of a relational approach, in a very kind of intimate way. We didn't have any grand ideas of what this would turn out to be. We still don't. We're still just, every year is a new year. And
just be a
and
presence.
we realized that,
just be a presence and pitch your tent and be a presence in the salt and light.
Absolutely. And Basil, you've seen that firsthand. You've been part of it. You've been part of it for years now. You've walked into the dust. And I'm looking forward to the day when Gonzi and your wife come.
Any
We've
day
had the
now.
Conversation before the show began.
Any day now. Yeah.
But so it slowly developed. In 2018, I returned with Bob, and we had 4 others who were then a part of the camp. 2019, Brian and Audrey Vanderclay joined and have been an integral part of the core team of our camp. Absolutely an integral part. In fact, in 2017, Brian, Audrey, and I went to our first regional burn, which was Freezer Burn in Alberta. And that ended up being a really important event because I was able to have conversations with people who had been to Burning Man, the big burn in Nevada before, and who were able to give me lots of pointers and tips. And even where we camp year after year after year came from suggestions and recommendations by a specific burner that we met in 2017 in Alberta at Freezer Burn. So that's, there's lots of little moving parts, and you realize that it ends up in you end up in a very unique situation as this kind of all just unfolds.
God's orchestration of everybody's footsteps is so apparent.
Absolutely.
When it's so hard to describe, but every single year there's always something, there's always some amazing story. And you get there and you sit down and you say, okay, we're ready to be a presence here, to shine a light for the kingdom of God. And it's just so apparent that God has orchestrated every single step in every single person's life in this intricate web of reality or experience or something, every single person. And it's just this incredibly beautiful thing. And I do want to give a shout out and confirm and really honor Brian and Audrey, who have been a part of the team for a long time, who have also been a really important part of the Canarium as well for a very long time. Beautiful people. And yeah, I look forward to connecting with them every year. And I'm just floored and stunned and so grateful for the way that God orchestrates, leads every single individual down the right path for his good reputation to make this mission happen every year.
Oh, absolutely. Even the name of the camp is something that fell out of the sky, so to speak, but it didn't. It was orchestrated. So in 2017, I had told the church that I attended, I still attend. I've been a part of this church since I was born. It's a small community church. We're a small town. We're out in the prairies. And I told my adult Sunday school class, hey, I'm going to Burning Man. They didn't know anything really about Burning Man. Now they do. Now they have a better handle of it, that's for sure. But in 2017, I said, this is what's happening. There's two of us going. We're going to set a tent out, and we'd love to have we'd love to have a sign with the name of our camp, but we don't know what to call our camp. We've been wrestling with this. We just don't know. And as explained to my class what the camp was to represent in terms of where the context of the camp was being positioned in this spiritual this spiritual mashup where there's so many alternative spiritual claims being made and so much spiritual representation, and there's this tension point with Christianity that's there, that's evident.
You mean like even geographically inside Black Rock City? Yeah,
absolutely. So one of the ladies from my adult Bible study, she came up to me later. Adult Sunday school came up to me later, and she goes, "Oh, this is Acts 17. You're in Acts 17. You're at Athens. This is the camp of the unknown God." And I'm like, oh, Rebecca, you nailed it. Thank you, Lord. You nailed it. That's exactly what this is. And so we take our camp name from Acts 17, where Paul goes to Athens. What does Paul do? He goes in with ignorance without having a clue where he's stepping into. He's heard lots of rumors. He's tried to stay away from the place. He's skirted the city, but for some reason he lands inside of the city. No, not at all. Not at all. He understands the city. He's taken the time to interact with the people. He has, we would call it cultural survey. He's walked through and he's surveyed the city. He has intended to go to the city. What is Athens? It is the pagan heart of the Greco-Roman world at the time. It is the pagan heart for Greek culture. And so in Acts 17, he finds himself now interacting with Jewish and Gentile believers. He is having conversations in the marketplace. And finally, some of the elites of the day, the learned men, come alongside and go, hey, you've got some interesting things you're saying. You kind of sound like a bit of a babbler. You've conjured a bunch of stuff together, but we'd like to hear more of what you have to say. Of course, I'm just paraphrasing. Mm-hmm. And so they take him to the Areopagus, which is an extension of the Acropolis, the hill with all these pagan temples. And I think this is an important part of what's behind the scene or between the lines.
It's like
he's not just having
of idols almost.
Yeah. He's not just having a coffee shop conversation. He is being brought to the council of the Areopagus. Who is the council? It is an ancient pagan judicial body that arose out of a deep pagan mythology. He now has to give an account to these men who are the gatekeepers of the city. What they determine will end up having Paul either allowed to stay or he gets the boot. And he has to now give an explanation of this deity, this claim that he has been preaching. The backdrop is he's on the Areopagus with the backdrop of the temple of Isis, the temple of Zeus, the temple of Athena. He is standing before essentially a pagan judicial priesthood. And when I'm saying a backdrop, these are massive temples. There is nothing I don't think that would be more intimidating if I kind of wrap my head around where he finds himself.
Yeah.
And now he's being grilled, and he has to give an explanation. And what does he do? He leverages the thing he has seen in the survey that he took of the city. And he said to the men of Athens, I perceive that you are very spiritual. For as I was walking around and considering the objects of your worship, I came across this one titled To the Unknown or the Unknowable, to the Unknown God. This I will not proclaim to you. And then he launches into God as the one who creates the heavens and the earth. He doesn't go into debates about religious customs or practices or do's or don'ts. He doesn't get into issues of morality or ethics. He lands right on ground zero in the pagan world, that the God that we serve is not the same as nature. This is not Zeus. This is not Isis. This is not Athena. This is the one who has made the heavens and the earth. This God is fundamentally different than all of your deities. This God is absolutely unique compared to your deities. That's where he begins. And then he ends it with what? The resurrection of Jesus Christ. Yeah. And along the way, he quotes their own philosopher. He actually quotes from the hymn of Zeus. He quotes their own beliefs back to them.
He speaks their language.
Paul, he knows their stuff. Not only does he know their location, he knows their thinking. Mm-hmm. He knows their language. He knows their stuff. Paul has gone in intentionally with knowledge, and then he found a way to leverage their specific situation so he could bring forward the gospel in a context that some, as you read the end of the chapter, believe. Others said, hey, we'll hear you again on this matter. Some mocked, but it's the Holy Spirit that changed hearts. It wasn't Paul, it was the Holy Spirit. And so that was the context for the Camp of the Unknown God. Does it mean that we have conversations every single day, every single moment of every single day there? No.
There's a lot of survival involved.
There's a lot of survival set up.
Yeah.
Yep. There's setup. There is just a full day of setting up. There's the logistics of trying to operate. There's a lot of moving parts. And along the way, we are interacting with our campmates around us, the different camps all around, individuals, groups. We're having meals with them. We're getting to know them. Some of them know us already very personally because we have been in the same location year after year after year. And in that sense, we want to be the salt and light. We want to be ambassadors, not in the cultural war, but in cultural diplomacy.
Oh, that's good.
We come are armed with knowledge, with grace, with truth.
Cultural diplomacy. That's incredible.
Yeah, that's kind of the theme that we have with our little organization, Orbis Century. So along the way, we've had other people joining our camp. The last 2 years, George and Ginny Olson have been a part of our camp. We formed a new organization, Orbis Century, and that looks to have this concept of cultural diplomacy, basically taking the principles of what we've done with the Camp of the Unknown God, add in other components to it, and then to educate and equip believers, not to be reactionaries, but to be responsive.
Yeah. Amen. That is so incredible. I want to make sure we're going to go deeper into Orbis Century here and let people know how they can interact more in a moment.
But in terms of Basil, the concept of the camp,
it's incredible, Carl. And I've always thought it's incredible. I have always been just so enthusiastic and engrossed with the camp, the name of the camp, the concept of the camp, the work that is done there, documenting it in the way that, I've been so, I've been allowed to do has been incredible. And the image, the story, again, God orchestrating the steps over many, many years is just blowing my mind on a day-to-day basis. The image that you draw from Acts of in Athens, and Paul is there amongst Athens, like you said, was very enchanted. They were maybe the most enchanted people. It was the most enchanted place. They had idols to every single god that they have ever heard of. They were very spiritual. And they recognized and they made this part of their life. They say, okay, yes, spirit. And remember, this is ancient Greece where logic and science is getting its birth. This is the birthplace of the Enlightenment values that lead to secularism, etc. But at the time, Athens, incredibly enchanted, so enchanted that they have worship technology, idols, temples, to every single god that they have ever encountered, to make a point that Whoever's right, we want to be with them. We want to honor every god, little g god that exists. And amongst this, again, sort of human powered by man's own power attempt to catalog every invisible force ruling the universe, in their case, every god, there was a little shrine, a little idol, a simple little space that they left for, hey, just in case we're missing anything, just in case there's a god we forgot, just in case, maybe even they knew it. Maybe they're like, I know we're missing something, so we're just going to make this one. This is a placeholder for the guy that we missed or whatever. And Paul steps in, like you said, uses their language, is amongst them, and was the answer to that question that they had been asking. And it just so happens that unknown God there in Athens is the Axis Mundi. And the connection to the camp of the unknown God going into Burning Man is almost too parallel to even try to describe. It kind of actually scares me a little bit how specific of a recreation of that atmosphere in Athens is. But like we mentioned, every year Burning Man puts out its own theme, and they use this theme to guide everything, to guide the artists who make the art, to guide the musicians who make the music, to guide the logistics guys, the mechanics, the water trucks, the porta potties. This is the spirit in which they want to, the tent pole, if you will. Was it Paul who was a tent maker? Who was the tent maker? It was Paul. Yeah, that's his whole thing. He was a tent maker, which was a vocation that allowed him to exist and be. And interestingly enough, you think of metaphorically the tent pole, the pole in the center of the tent that holds everything up. That is what this theme is that the Burning Man organization puts. And I'm going to put my screen up here, Gons, because I want to read it directly from the Burning Man website. I see we're fighting for that. There you go. All right, so this is directly from the Burning Man Journal, burningman.org, and this is their release. It says, Burning Man 2026, Axis Mundi. It starts with a quote. The quote, "The world tree rises at the center of the cosmos, its roots in the underworld, its branches in the heavens, its trunk in the middle of men." That was a quote by Mircea Eliade. I don't know who Mircea Eliade. And it goes on. In nearly every culture on Earth, people have imagined a center point for their existence, a celestial column or temple that connects us with powers greater than ourselves. To the Maya, it was the Ceiba tree. To the Norse, it was Yggdrasil. To the Celts, it was Cran Bathad. The ancient Greeks called it the cosmic pillar. The Slavs knew it as the great oak. Siddhartha's Bodhi tree, the sacred cottonwood of the Lakota, and the Iroku of the Yoruba can all be seen as manifestations of the same deeply rooted idea. So we have here, Burning Man, its own Athens. They are alluding to every spiritual reference to this concept that they can. They have their own garden of idols right here in their own explanation, trying to serve every religious or spiritual tradition that they can find. And it goes on. In some cultures, this pathway between the worlds stands in a specific location, a sacred spot defined by myth and memory. In others, it is wherever human intentions position it, like the totem poles of the Pacific Northwest or the Chiringa pole of native Australian peoples, carried in nomads' kit and erected at each camp along the way to anchor the group in their history and cosmology. In his book, The Sacred and the Profane, Mircea Eliade tells the story of one such group who lost their Chiringa and collapsed in collective grief, unanchored from the cosmic tree, suddenly unmoored by the world. And one more paragraph here. The man at Burning Man can be seen as our version of the cosmic tree, a Jacob's ladder connecting us to the unseen and unknowable. It functions as the Axis Mundi of our far-flung world around which we all spin at 1,000 miles an hour, clinging to each other to keep from flying off into space. Each summer, it rises from the ancient lake bed of the Black Rock Desert, and throughout the year, its sibling effigies are planted at regional gatherings around the world. So they are building this image of the tent pole, the column that connects the unseen with the seen. And while they are describing the man, which goes up in flames, the effigy that is burned at the end of Burning Man, you'll notice they include so many references to so many eclectic spiritual traditions about the column that connects heaven and earth, and one they do leave out, which is the cross. Jesus Christ, the cross being the column that connected, finally, as the new covenant, the new agreement between God and man. And while in the Burning Man blog here, they search for every little example of this concept that they can in spirituality around the world, there is one that they leave out, and that is the cross. And that is such an important part of what the Camp of the Unknown God is about, is being Paul in Athens among the many, many attempts to connect to the numinous and the supernatural and say, you left one out, I see. And let me tell you about Jesus, the Logos, the code of the universe. It's not just about being a good boy and going to heaven, but within the cross, within the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ, contains all these mysteries that you are looking for, dear man, at Burning Man. You are looking for the cosmic answers. You are, participating in pharmakia. You're taking the drugs. You're doing the rituals. You're doing all of it because of this ancient call to reconnect and walk with God that is a product of the fall. And yet you're so close, you're just missing one thing. And that is that the column you're really searching for, the tent pole you're really searching for, is the cross of Jesus Christ. And that is a beautiful example and picture of the kinds of conversations and presence as Christians we get to be at Burning Man. It's just mind-blowingly relevant. And it could only happen at this time, right? I mean, the culmination of everything we've been talking about, the age of Re-Enchantment, the 100 years of the secular battle, everything all culminating, even COVID, the loss of faith in institutions and the media, all culminates to this year where Burning Man themselves are saying, here we are. We know there's a connection. We know there's a place where heaven meets earth, and we are searching for it. And the Camp of the Unknown God gets to stand there in true, biblical Book of Acts fashion, and just be there for God to orchestrate our steps, everyone's steps, right? And we have amazing stories that we have told through podcasts, you have told. We have episodes everywhere, burningmanresearch.com. Go check it out. We'll return to that in a moment. But we even have testimonies from these people who are from such diverse backgrounds and amazing things God has done. And I eventually here will read a testimony from one of them to share the fruits of this project with the people listening. But Carl, I mean, my mind, I I can't, my human brain can't contain what's, I'm just so grateful to God for connecting us and for your work.
Yeah.
So I'll let you, if that inspires anything in you.
Me too. I mean, this is, especially with this year's theme, it's like, it's an open book. It's an open invitation. It is a literalizing of that Act 17 experience. I'm not a pessimistic person. However, I always have a certain amount of concern I carry with me when I'm going to do the Camp of the Unknown God. Well, number one, I want to make sure that our team gets along, because every year we have new people, we have different experiences. There's always things that happen. And Basil, you well know you've got to try to figure this out in a very harsh environment. And so that's always there. I've got that over our head a little bit, not too much, but it's always there, especially the logistics side of everything. Then the other thing, and I have to tell people, we don't know how the year will unfold. We don't know how that every particular burn unfolds. We may not have any conversations. It may feel like a dud. Now, by the way, it's never been a dud. There's always conversations, always. There's always something that has happened. 2023, it didn't seem to be much, but there was still some stuff that happened. Some really cool stuff. And the last couple of years especially, it's been just amazing who God has brought into our camp, or we've encountered at a workshop, or conversations we've had at an art piece. It's actually quite mind-blowing, 100% mind-blowing. And with that in mind, at the same time, I'm going, oh, and I know it's not on me. I know it's not, but we're still human. We're still people. And you're going, there's a weight on your shoulders. Don't screw it up. Make it all work. Don't let things fall apart. Make it all work. Don't screw it up, Carl. Because you guys know what that's like. You've got this.
I go through the same thing every time with the episodes we try to put together.
Right. Gons and Basil, you guys both have that responsibility. It's on your shoulders. And so with that in mind, all we can say is we're going to walk in. God will direct. God will bring ordained moments into play that I cannot foresee. I won't have the answers for some of them. Some of them will be right up our alley. Others will be like, we're going to be head scratchers. We'll be walking away going, that was the most bizarre conversation I've ever had. I have no clue if it actually struck home. Because you got it all. But it's exciting. My goodness, it's exciting. The risk of the environment, the potential risk for Burning Man becoming the epicenter of an international incident is there. That's a whole different dimension to the conversation. But if something's going to happen, Burning Man is the place for a propaganda coup if all of a sudden something goes kaboom. And there was concerns of that already in 2024, big concerns. And we saw those same concerns played out last year a little bit too.
Many of our listeners will remember. And again, that we could go on for hours and hours, Carl, you and I, about this. And we have. And I just want to release myself and yourself from feeling the pressure to touch every single thing that we feel so passionate about.
I know.
But just for a listener who, if they're interested and want to hear how much deeper this all goes, go to burningmanresearch.com or check us out on the Apple Podcasts or the YouTube channel. Just search Burning Man, Canary Cry Radio. And, we have years and years and years of stuff of us talking about this, diving into the technocratic issues, the technology, the propaganda, the social engineering aspects of Burning Man. It's all there. So again, it's everything. Much like the gospel is everything in the universe. like Burning Man connects to every issue that anybody might be concerned about or interested in this world. But you're right. we both, Gons and I both feel that pressure you're talking about of like, oh my gosh, it's so big and there's so much potential. But we thankfully can go, God, you are in control. You guide our steps.
Yep.
And even when what we're doing feels like we're just taking out the trash, you are orchestrating everything for the good of those who love you and also for your kingdom and your purpose. Now, I want to mention real quick, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to sandbag, but I'm just so excited. I want to just make sure a couple things are out there. I also want to mention, because over the years, it used to be that the Camp of the Unknown God and what I get to do with you, what you allow me to do with you, was like pretty unique and like, audio adventures and interviews and analysis and everything. In the current age that we live, where technology has increased and interest in this sort of thing is much higher, and that kind of stuff, like Christian takes on Burning Man, people will send me several accounts or videos or something of Christians going out to Burning Man and filming, talking to people and witnessing and sharing the gospel and things like that. And God bless them. God bless them. God be all over the thing. For the Camp of the Unknown God, and for me as a person going out there to make some media, there's actually some things that make me a little uncomfortable about that. Like, it's actually really, really against stated official Burning Man culture to walk around with a camera and to walk around with a video camera. This is really a real no-no when it comes to going to Burning Man. And while I know God works through everybody doing stuff, but when I see a video of a Christian walking around and filming themselves sharing Jesus, I cringe a little bit, because I'm like, even the presence of that video camera is a bit of an insult to that community, to that culture. And it makes me kind of recoil a little bit that, it's content, like this Christian, God bless them, and any opportunity for salvation, I love and I praise. I join with the angels in thanking God for any salvation that comes out of it or any conversation. But the form to make content out of evangelizing at a place that actively tells you not to film, actively tells you to put away your camera, actively says, hey, nobody around here wants to be filmed by you, like it just kind of, it just feels kind of weird. And so for the Camp of the Unknown God, and again, for my job, my mission that God has put me on there, bringing back these things, as always, it feels a little like, oh man, I could be maximizing views a little bit better. I could be hitting the algorithms. I want people to share my video of me getting somebody saved at Burning Man or something, which is just so gross, but it's just a part of the thing that God has me dealing with. So in the culture of the Camp of the Unknown God and of the culture of Burning Man, just like you said, Paul in Athens, does that ring any bells for you? Does that inspire any thoughts for you?
Oh my goodness, many, many thoughts. So this is something we've had to wrestle with now as a camp for a little while, especially the last 2 years, as we have encountered others out there, Christians, who have a very different approach than we do. And it ends up sometimes on social media in ways that are uncomfortable. One of the flashpoints and the point, an area of concern for us as a camp is how we handle the temple, because we've seen groups of Christians out there at the temple and pursuing people in a way that we don't feel comfortable with. I get it that sometimes they're just having conversations. At other times, things have gone in a different direction, where it's like almost pressuring you into saying a certain prayer. Again, there's points and times when I'm sure God will be using that to bring people to himself. God will use all kinds of things. Just because
you and I are uncomfortable doesn't mean that God isn't moving. I want to be clear about that.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So it's forced us to ask the question, how do we handle specifically the temple? Because we go there, we've had conversations, and we realize that we have to be super discerning and super sensitive as we're having conversations with people specifically at the temple, that we do not come across as targeting.
Mhm.
That's the thing. We don't target. Our camp doesn't target. We're not going, hey, this is the number count we need. There is no number counting. Period. We don't do that. We don't put a camera in your face to say, hey, we're gonna have why are you here? And let me tell you about what Jesus did in my life. No. We're having conversations. Sometimes we're fixing their tents and their camps and putting it all back together for them. After a great big windstorm, we're sharing a meal. They're coming into our camp to have conversations. We're just living life. And in a sense, and this is going to sound kind of weird for some people, in a sense, we're trying to safeguard their own community. Because if there's anything that we've realized, is that the Christian community bears false witness about burners.
Yeah.
Because we tend to focus purely on the sensationalistic, and then we lose track of the human side, the soul, the heart, the person, the individual. And recognizing that not everybody is coming just to party. In fact, there's a far more people searching than you may realize. They're stepping into that space because they're anticipating that something is going to transform them. They're hoping for something that's going to change them. So we have had conversations with people who have said the prayer at the temple when other Christian groups have been there, but we find out later that they only said the prayer to get them off their back.
Right.
Ouch. Interestingly, one of those ended up in two of them ended up in our camp, and one of them returned back to Christ in the church, which was the Holy Spirit's doing. And it just, so cool. So cool. This is such an interesting week-long event, and it is so unique to the world, and it's recognized that way. It is understood that way. In fact, there's lots of conversation about how for a short time, for just that 1 week, this seems to be the center of the world, and it kind of is. And so how we interact there, we want to interact as ambassadors for Christ. We're not coming in as with placards and bullhorns. We want to have conversations that exhibits being a diplomat for Jesus, an ambassador for Christ. Serious conversations, heartfelt conversations, but in the process, we want to know them individually. We want to be able to maintain, if we can, potentially maintain relationships and conversations, and we have. We're very, very fortunate for that.
There's a time to be a soldier for Christ. There's a time to be a warrior for Christ. There's a time for battle, but then there is also a time for diplomacy. There is a time to be an ambassador, and that's kind of the vibe, that not to use vibe in sort of a spiritual way, but you know what I mean. That's how we feel encouraged.
Yeah, that's our flavor. That's our flavor.
And on that note, I wanted to share as an example of fruit of exactly what you're saying. There was a young lady just a couple months ago that wrote me an email back in April, and I'm a little bit battling about, I don't want to share anything too personal. I don't want her to think that I'm making content out of her lovely email. So I will say this is from Rosie. Rosie, a wonderful young lady we met in 2024.
Oh yeah.
She was at the Camp of the Unknown God. We had wonderful conversations and Bible studies with her and her company there. And she wrote me back in April, and it was kind of like, hey, it's me, Rosie. I don't know if you remember or not, but I wanted to share with you how my journey has been going about repairing my relationship with God. And talks about how after that Burning Man, she began going to church again. And she began going to church with her dad and her siblings again. And then they, went to different they went to Latin Mass, or they went to singing Mass at Easter, and she was just floored by the beauty of it and the reverence and kind of the, that flavor of things, which I think is interesting in this time where we're experiencing kind of an interesting revival in Christendom, people coming to Christianity, but not in ways that us American Protestants may have guessed. Like they're coming to Catholicism and Orthodoxy because of the aesthetics, because of the ritual, the reverence, which is something that's really actually also a part of Burning Man culture. And she goes on and she says, I liked it so much, I started going to church regularly. And even though I was still struggling with drugs and other things, that God was bringing me down this path. And it goes on about how, her reconciliation with God led to conversations with her brother and his reconciliation with God. And going to more church with that part of the family and her nephews, and how everybody, it's just this rippling effect of reconciling not just her, but her whole family, finding ways to reconcile with each other, but also as a unit back to God. And she shared some more things about a dream she had and stuff, and it was a very lovely email. And I would love to get the opportunity to bring Rosie on and talk to her, maybe even before this Burning Man. But it was just such a perfect reminder. It was I'm so glad. I don't know if she knows it or not, but her obedience to God in writing that email to me came at the perfect time to remind me and inspire me and show me the fruit of all of our labors, the labors that we worry about and feel so much pressure about and everything like that. And so I wanted to share that with our listeners, our Canary Cry family, because I just think that's important. We're all in this together. And if Rosie hears this, I hope she does. I would love a chance to get down to sit and talk some more. But that's kind of the thing, right? It's less about me. I grew up in the church. I would go on mission trips all the time, and it was a whole thing on these mission trips that we would keep track of every single salvation, right? And we would have a number when we got back. And we would say the number to the church and say, we got 1,000 people saved. And everybody goes, yay. And that's beautiful and that's good. But that's also different from what we feel that the Camp of the Unknown God is called to do, which is what we've been talking about, but also sort of this, it also includes this intellectual work, this research that was used in your work, in your book, in our understanding here on this show, that has really shone a light on the culture around us. So I wanted to share that special email from Rosie, because I know you remember her and the effect.
Oh, that's so cool. So cool. I need to get a hold of her. We have other team members who have gone back and forth with her. I haven't. I need to be able to reach out to her. In fact, one of our teammates, Ginny, I got Rosie's number from Ginny, so I've got to reach out to Rosie and see how she's doing. But that is so cool. Rosie's situation, it happened in such a unique way, but everything there does. In 2024, we're at a workshop at the Earth Guardians camp on the question, can Mother Nature have the same legal rights as humans? Can we give nature human rights? And so we had an international activist in this movement, because it is actually a legal movement. There are jurisdictions that's already putting this within code. And some comment was made about how we're the same as beavers and dust and geese and just weird stuff like that. And I couldn't take it anymore. And I raised my hand and I said something to the effect of, beavers aren't having these conversations, geese aren't having these conversations, deer aren't having these conversations. The only ones who are having these conversations, pro or con, are us. And the fact that we're the only ones doing it demonstrates we're not the same as everything else. And this young lady beside me, who I didn't know, I mean, I never talked to her before, she turned around, she looked at me and she goes, "You're right." And then she's like, "Can we talk after?" And with her friend, and we ended up having this huge conversation. There was most of our camp was at the Earth Guardian workshop. Give Earth Guardians credit; they left us alone. They saw something was going on between our little group and this couple, and they just backed away and let us use their space for basically the bulk of the afternoon to have a conversation about how God is fundamentally different. It's not oneness. It's otherness. God is other than creation. And
which is such a heresy to like some of the re-enchantment culture, you know.
It's 100% the heresy. That is the heresy.
What do you mean we aren't God? What do you mean we are not the same as God?
Exactly. And so they ended up coming to our camp. We invited them to our Bible study. I gave them copies of my book. I went to find them in their camp. I couldn't find their camp. They gave me directions. Something got screwed up. I found a van that I thought was their van. I put a couple of copies of my book there. Found out later I'd taken it to the wrong camp.
Well, somebody else got some cool stuff.
So I have no idea where. Yeah, exactly. So it ended up all of a sudden we're doing our Bible study, and we told them where to find our camp, and we're doing our Bible study in the morning, and they walk in, and that was the morning that we were reading through Psalm 51, and Rosie asked if she could read it, and we're like, okay, sure, here you go. And of course, if you know Psalm 51, it's David's model of repentance.
Holy smokes!
And Rosie, holy smokes, Rosie started to read it, and partway through, it didn't take long, and the tears were streaming down her cheek as she could see herself in David's lamentation and his heart cry for forgiveness.
Yeah. Amen. Oh my gosh.
And that's where it landed. That's where it landed.
You know, I'm so happy that we're able to I'm just so excited about this entire conversation for so many reasons. But I also wanted to mention that, you know, we have been, again, have the privilege to work with you for a very long time and make all sorts of episodes, and the Canarium is very familiar, and it's been a very important part of our worldview, the Canary Cry theory of everything, we call it. And, you know, people have had mixed reviews every year, obviously. But some people have been incredibly inspired. And I mean, I want to give a shout out and a big, huge thank you to every Canarian who has ever supported your work, who has ever bought your book, who has ever donated to the Camp of the Unknown God, who has ever helped fund me going out to participate in it. You know, year after year, there's been Canarians who understand, who really get what we're doing. And you know, I'm in a point in my life now where I'm like, oh my gosh, if just one person really understands what I'm trying to do and what I'm trying to say, like that is such a treasure. And I'm so grateful. So I want to give a huge heartfelt thank you to every listener, every producer, every Canarian who has ever been involved. And, you know, it's been, I've received a few Canarians reaching out who have shown interest in actually joining. And, you know, some people are more equipped and more serious than others. And there's been a number of people who are just really understand and love what and want to be a part of it. But I do want to give a shout out to producer. I don't want to put him on the spot, but we have a wonderful producer who actually has been to Burning Man before and has reached out to us over and over and over. I'm sorry, I don't mean to say he's like badgering me, but he's reached out multiple times over many years about like, I really think maybe this is the year I should come out and join. I think I feel called. And, you know, this year, you know, is a special year because, you know, God has lined up funding for him to go and he has reached out. And, you know, one thing that I really wanted to make sure to do is make sure you know, and I want to let you know that you have other ambassadors and diplomats who are ready to join your mission and connect and partner with the Camp of the Unknown God. And there's, of course, a lot of ways to do this. Of course, even just from prayer to support, but also attendance and work with you. And so I am going to make sure to connect you. We already had a little chat before the show. We're going to get you guys connected via email and phone number and all of that, because I think it would be really special to have this Canarian come out and join. Is that something that you have room for this year?
That would be exciting. That would be
Beautiful.
so cool.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Now, for all of those who might, who are sitting here going, "Oh my gosh, I totally get it. I'm totally stoked." Something you mentioned earlier that was incredible is that you have officially created an actual organization. Not that it was so loosey-goosey before, but you've taken the next step in what God has for you and your work. Can you tell us about Orbis Century?
Yeah, sure. So Orbis Century is an organization that my friend George Olson and I founded last year. So quick backstory. In 2024, February of 2024, I was speaking at a Christian event. It was live streamed, and I had talked about transformational culture and Burning Man. And I also brought up that there was going to be an event in Texas called the Texas Eclipse Festival. So Eclipse festivals they are a subculture. They've been around since the 70s. They are a subculture of the transformational evolutionary community. And I had mentioned that this is going to be happening in Texas, the epicenter of where the eclipse would take place. And a gentleman reached out to me. His name was George, and he said, "Hey, this is happening basically in my community's backyard. What can my church do? What can other churches in the area do to reach out to these people?" Because there'd be like 30, 40,000 people or so showing up. And by the way, there was a lot of people. I was there. George was there. And so I gave George a list of just certain things that he might want to consider as a church. And he's like, "That's fantastic. Great ideas." He took him back to his church. He took it to, I believe he took it to some other churches as well. And the response was, "We basically don't want anything to do with this. We don't even want these people here." Well, too late. So sad. So, too bad. They're coming. And if you don't want to deal with it, if you don't want to be ambassadors, well, you're missing this opportunity. So George reached back out to me and went, "I'm getting no positive responses. Can I come with you?" I'm like, "Sure, come with." So George has an interesting background. Ex-Navy, many years working with New Tribes missions, specifically in the Philippines with jungle communities. He knows what it's like to work in indigenous cultures with shamans. Him and his wife Jenny have had some pretty incredible experiences. So I said, "Sure, George, come with me." So we did. He did. And it was interesting. I actually found watching George to be more interesting than watching the event. I knew what was going to happen at the event. We had shamans venerating the sun on one hand with a sacred fire and drumming and all the stuff that goes with it. And just if I could pick up a stone and had a good arm, I could have hit Elon Musk's space tent. And all the conversations on technology, and then a little ways away, it's all conversations on cryptocurrency, drone technology. Not far away from that is conversations on psychedelics and getting downloads from entities. And so what was fascinating was watching George. The very first day, George is blown away as he's going, "I did not know America, this so-called Christian culture or Christian country, so-called, has such a huge, vibrant subculture of re-enchantment." He's like, this is the scope, the size, the scale just blew him away. And so he was in culture shock, quite literally, walking around. Second day, he was in shock because of the world level conversations that he had been listening to on those topics I had just expressed a couple of minutes ago. And he's like, this is huge. These are massive conversations. Where are the Christians? We should be paying attention. And then the third day, it was almost like mourning. He was like, the church doesn't know what's coming. The church doesn't know how to answer this. The church doesn't get where the culture is going. He's like, how in the world are we going to educate the church? We don't even have a language for what they're doing. We don't get it. And I'm like, you're right. You're right. Welcome to my world. It's been an interesting road. And it was very sobering. Very, very sobering. So after that, I ended up getting our team ready to go to Burning Man. And, I'm just part of this ragtag group. And Basil, you're there with us. And in 2024, George and his wife, Ginny, came because he realized that they needed to go. And so he came to that and his wife came to it. And then in 2025, I dragged George with me and it was not dragging, he came very willingly and very, very quickly. I took him to the NATO security conversations, the NATO dialogue in Dayton. NATO in 2025 had their parliament in Dayton, Ohio, and they also had a forum as well that you could participate in. So we participated in that for a number of days. And then, and George also came to Paganicon with me as well. And in Dayton, as we're sitting there waiting for NATO workshops to begin and listening to these massive conversations about global security, we're like, we're on the same page. We realize the church needs to be equipped. We're standing at the intersection, the crossroads, where all of these different factors are converging: the geopolitical, the spiritual and religious, the cultural, the technological, the economic. We're seeing it within the framework of Re-Enchantment. We see it within a few other frameworks. George works quite a bit with the concept of the fourth turning. We have to look at this from a perspective of cultural diplomacy, because the culture war is dividing, not bringing knowledge to play in a way that gives us a response. It just brings reactions. And it's time for us to consider responding and not reacting. We need to form an organization and see where this goes. Now, it's a small group. It's just a handful of us. We do have nonprofit status. So this year, we are using Orbis Century as our umbrella because of its legal framework and because Orbis Century is using our time at Burning Man through the Camp of the Unknown God to do continual research in cultural transformation. So we are using that as our fundraising platform as well, which does offer tax-deductible receipts too, because we are nonprofit status in the state of Texas. So that's the background. And we're looking at doing more operations, more research events that we are looking to attend. We both are doing quite a bit of work on Substack and doing presentations to churches and looking at seeing how we can flesh this out further. Like I said, this is fresh. We're pretty new at all of this, but we're looking at the perspective of what does it mean to be an ambassador?
Yeah.
Which means first we not just know what the King's message is, our King of Kings, but we also know what the flavor and the message of the world is in which we operate. And now, with that in mind, how now do we bring the gospel forward with knowledge, grace, with truth, being able to understand the language and do it in such a manner that we can bring a response and not just the knee-jerk reactions that we've been seeing, which is so typical of how we now operate through the conditioning that's happened online.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah, it's so interesting. We've been seeing this very interesting shift. And again, those who have eyes to see have been seeing it with us. Just this very interesting change in culture and the structure of everything. And as Christians, as followers of Christ, we want to be sensitive to this, and we want to participate in the way that God has really blessed, and sort of, it's got this like tactical kind of vibe to it, strategic, but it's also very much just being in the will of God, right? And doing things how he
Absolutely.
wants to do them. Yeah. George is awesome. I spent some time talking with George. We have George on tape. I'm looking at some of we need to update burningmanresearch.com, but I believe George appeared on last year's Burning Man episode. Gons, did he make it on there? If not, we're going to put out some Burning Man episodes here as we go up to Burning Man. But Orbis Century, very fun. I had to do a little Google to see what the sort of Latin-ness of that, what the Latin meaning is. Would you like to give us the etymology of Orbis Century first?
No, I'm gonna let you do
Okay.
it, Basil, because you've done your
I
homework.
try. I follow my nose at least. Well, Orbis meaning circle or sphere, maybe globe even. Who knows? So don't get too freaked out, flat earthers. It's okay. We're just talking here. And century meaning to guard or a watchman or something like that. So we're looking at the concept of being a watchman or a guard, either watching over the globe, over the world, or even maybe from the world, something like that, or maybe perhaps protecting, creation, or standing watch over what God has put in front of us here. Is that about it?
That nails it. That absolutely nails it, Basil.
I love it so much.
Indeed.
Well,
Yes.
good. I want to encourage people. We'll mention it again, but you can go to orbis-century.org, and you know what? We're gonna get connected with the Canary Cry tech team. We'll see if we can find an even easier path to get connected to you there. If anybody's interested in supporting the Camp of the Unknown God and the whole thing, we're going to update the burningmanresearch.com page. There will be a button to support you guys directly, and any other thing. You and I, we'll talk later, Carl, about how you want to interact and do that kind of thing. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Goodness gracious. Gons, did you have anything that you wanted to visit and talk to? I'm sorry. I'm just so excited.
Okay.
You're so patient with me.
I know.
You're so patient. You're so kind, and I love you very much. Okay.
Thank you very much. So I implore you guys, I know that I've been going down the Axis Mundi rabbit hole this whole time you guys have been talking about this stuff. And I think Basil, you brought up how the Burning Man page doesn't mention the cross. Oops, my microphone's making cracklies. But I did notice that if you go to the Wikipedia, it also lists just an enormous amount of different Axis Mundis from all kinds of different cultures and religions and worldviews, and it's pretty massive. In there, it does mention a few things. I highlighted a few things.
You're saying the Wikipedia for Axis Mundi.
Yes.
Axis Mundi, the theme for Burning Man, the Wikipedia for Axis Mundi. Okay.
Yes. It does say that the tide volcano was for the Canarian Aborigines, a kind of Axis Mundi, so I thought that was interesting.
Okay.
It mentions in ancient Mesopotamia, the cultures of ancient Sumer and Babylon built tall platforms or ziggurats, and to some, that is. It does mention for Christians...
Tower of Babel was a Axis Mundi.
Yes. For Christians, the cross on Mount Calvary expresses this symbol. That's all. It's a little sentence in there. So it is mentioned. I'll come back to that in a second. It does also mention Mount Hermon, regarded as the Axis Mundi in Canaanite tradition, from where the sons of God are introduced, descending in 1 Enoch 6:6. So
wow,
it mentions a lot of these different things. Now I want to go back to this Christians and the cross here because so there's a small mention here, obviously, in the Wikipedia, but as I kind of did a little more digging, I think what you might encounter, if this topic is discussed with anybody who is informed, the cross will, for many who are there and maybe, hold on to the ethos and the worldview and philosophy of Burning Man, the cross might be one of many. as sort of is displayed here on the Wikipedia page, just one of many different Axis Mundi. And, we understand Jesus, the cross and whatnot, and the Calvary and all
Athens.
that. It's just one of many, and I think you might encounter that. So I implore both of you, Carl, I know Carl's done his homework, but Basil, do your homework on why Christ is different from all the others. And it's not what you think. I'm kind of going down this rabbit trail and I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe it's because Jesus was a man, it's not just the cross, but it's the man, it's the person, Christ, that differentiates from other potential Axis Mundi. And that's not it either. A lot of different religions consider the shaman, or in Norse mythology, it's Odin. So they have these individuals that are considered perhaps an Axis Mundi. So that's not the distinguisher either. So then I thought, okay, maybe it's the death of Christ. He died on the cross for mankind. Maybe that's what it is. And that's not it either, because Odin hung on the world tree. The shaman is considered to, quote unquote, go through this ritual of dying and rising to connect heaven and earth. So there's a lot more overlap, which can be a point of evangelism.
It's a stepping stone into conversation in the exact way we've been talking about.
But as far as I can understand in my short little study here, the one differentiator is that a lot of the Axis Mundi for most of the worldviews, it's a point that where humans can ascend. It's this ladder upwards. It's this ability to escape the fallen world and escape the problems into heaven. And if there is a connecting heaven and earth, it's more of like bridging and bringing and opening up the access, and it's through secret knowledge and secret rituals and all these different things. Whereas with the cross, it's number one, it's God coming down. It's different. Although, again, Hindus have that with the avatar, that, it's a little different, but they have this idea of the gods sort of coming down as avatars to the earth and teaching things to mankind, which kind of reflects the Watcher's worldview. But the difference is that with Christ, it's not just the cosmic center idea, but it's this idea that he died on the cross in shame, as a curse, and as this blood sacrifice. It's like this humiliation, and it brings this atonement level, and that is completely opposite of a lot of the Axis Mundi, which is more of like this Tower of Babel thing, like moving
very
upward.
Positive.
Like moving upward, bright, ascending the tree.
Achievement, right? The other Axis Mundi is this like achievement of man to connect.
Yeah.
We have done it. Whereas the cross is the humiliation of God.
Right. And for the shaman, it's an initiation, and it can be repeated over and over again. You can be another shaman to kind of rise the ranks and do this same death ritual, which allows them to access heaven and earth and below the earth, and kind of,
which I actually got some content. I can't believe I almost said that. But in a recording that I took last year, I was on a search for an Orthodox Christian event going on at Burning Man, and I stumbled upon a shamanic death ritual that people were doing out there.
That.
I don't know. I don't think that one got posted, but we got stuff to put out, folks. Yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah, it's in the archives. But the difference with Christ is that it was a one-time event, and it was redemptive. We don't have to keep repeating the cross over and over and over again for that redemption to be available to everyone. So I think you guys will have, if you guys run into people that are in the know with this stuff, you'll have fascinating conversations, because I'm getting a kick out of just going down these rabbit holes and seeing sort of the commonalities, but also the differences. And man, what a great theme for the year. And I'm sure, the organizers are thinking, we got them Christians this time, they'll just be lost in the mix of all the Axis Mundi, but not so much. So
totally.
Anyway, just thought I'd throw that in there to kind of wrap things up.
All their attempts. Yeah.
Gonzaga is awesome.
Beautiful.
Yes. Yep.
Well, Carl, gosh darn it. Thank you so much for coming on. Now, I don't need to land the plane for just for the sake of landing the plane. Is there anything that we haven't touched on? Is there anything on your mind? Is there something you want to say? Is there a topic or anything that is burning on your heart? You feeling good?
No, this was a fantastic conversation, gentlemen. I really appreciated it. And there's already so much that has been recorded and worked through that you folks have on your research page. Gons and Basil, you guys have done a tremendous service by correlating and collating all of that for us on your page. So that's, there's an ample amount of information. There's no problem with the information. I'd ask your audience, continue to pray for us. We need wisdom as we walk into this place. We need discernment. Pray that as a team, we're able to operate well together. We have people coming from, at this point, 3 different countries. We would definitely ask that you would pray for the hearts of the people that we'll be interacting with, that God's already will be softening hearts and bringing divine appointments into play. And that we're going to, again, that wisdom to know what's important, when it's important, when to speak, when to be silent, when to shut up. That's actually a bigger thing than you might realize. Like, seriously, let them talk, and then and see them as people, not as marks.
Amen. Yeah. Amen. And dear listener, dear Canarian, or maybe you're new, you're finding this for the first time. I hope this inspires you. I hope this brings understanding. Many of you already know all this, and I hope this encourages you. And if you feel compelled to support the Camp of the Unknown God in any way, right? I mean, obviously financial is important across the board, but in any way, go to orbis-century.org. You can find all of that wonderful information. You can make donations there. Of course, as we start ramping up and building and preparing, I am planning on going out with you, Carl, this year. And we hope to, I'm just confident that God has amazing things planned. And even in the moment, if it feels like we're wandering, He's guiding our steps. Gons, we'll probably try, maybe, here's the thing. Last year, we didn't put out a ton of the material that we retrieved from last year, but maybe it's because God was trying to save it for this year, for the lead up.
It's possible. There's a lot of material in the database there, so we can
endless material. It's almost overwhelming, but we'll see what God wants to put out there. But I encourage people, even just pray. Just pray for the Camp of the Unknown God. Pray for Burning Man. Pray for the people. Pray for the lost. Pray for the Christians. Pray for the event. Pray for the safety. I mean, it is more apparent than ever. Even the non-believers now have been re-enchanted and understand that there is a spiritual battle going on at all times. And so how much more should we as believers be participating in the intercession, the prayer life, to give thanks to God, but then yearn for seeing, feeling, experiencing His sovereignty on earth playing out right in front of us. And of course, if a lot of this is gobbledygook and you don't quite get what we're talking about, you can go to burningmanresearch.com and you can listen to years and years of episodes that we've done. And Carl, I'm just so grateful, not just grateful to God for you and the thing that we get to do together this year, but for your influence and your work on us and our community for many, many years now, my friend. I'm just so grateful to God for you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, guys. Really appreciate that.
Absolutely. And if you haven't done it yet, make sure, go find Game of Gods, okay? This, more than anything, this piece of work is not only going to give you insight into what we see going on around us, the state of the world, but also it will bring comfort for you to know that this is not a surprise. This is not a thing that jumped out behind a bush and we're wondering, whoa, didn't see this coming. No, this has been the direction that God has been bringing humanity for a while. Game of Gods, The Temple of Man in the Age of Re-Enchantment, a wonderful resource for understanding and insight for those who are trying to live their lives that way. Carl Teichrib, thank you so much, my friend. I can't wait to talk to you again, and I can't wait to see you in person.
Awesome. Well, Gons and Basil, you guys have yourself a fantastic day, and I'm looking forward to our conversation again down the road.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning into this episode of Canary Cry Radio. Make sure to tune in next time. But until then, think outside the cage.